Welcome to Bible for Modern Minds podcast.
So today we're doing something a little different.
Yeah.
Instead of our usual, stack of research papers or forecast, we're zeroing in on just one single really powerful source. It's the personal testimony of a man, we're just going to call him TJ. And it is a raw roadmap of a life defined by this profound internal conflict, a deep dive into addiction, and then this just instantaneous spiritual transformation.
And that roadmap, that chronological aspect is so important. Our mission here is really to trace those connections. We want to look at the specific pressures, the seeds of darkness and light that were planted way back in his childhood, and then understand the moments where his choices just accelerated that descent. And crucially, we have to analyze the turning points because the order of events is everything to understanding the outcome here.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The whole narrative kicks off with this deep conflict in his mother's life.
Yeah. It really does. She was pulled between this radical Christian faith she got from her grandmother, who was a huge spiritual anchor in the family.
And her affection for his biological father.
Exactly.
Okay.
Who the source just bluntly calls a rolling stone. Unfaithful.
So she's trying to build a bridge between these two, I guess, incompatible worlds.
Yeah, she was planning a marriage, probably hoping that commitment would stabilize him, but then she has this powerful moment of conviction.
The wedding dress story.
The wedding dress story. She's trying it on, and she hears this immediate warning in her spirit, if you do this, it'll be the death of you. And that was it. That was the catalyst. She just abruptly leaves Akron, Ohio for Columbus to get away from him.
But that distance was only temporary. The father follows her, and what comes next is this just chillingly calculated abandonment.
It is. He tells TJ's mother he's just running to the store, for diapers or formula, but he'd secretly packed his clothes in a trash bag, threw it out the second-story window, and just drove off. A final exit.
Wow. And that abandonment, it's not just an emotional wound, right? It creates kind of vacuum.
A vacuum is the perfect word. It's what allowed, as he puts it, these seeds of darkness to be planted. During summer visits back in Akron, TJ says he was literally bouncing from one woman's house to another woman's house.
And he was sort of used as a pawn in all this.
He was. The father's girlfriends would grill him, does your father have other girlfriends? Which, of course, made his father furious.
But the most damaging incident, the one that really sticks with him, is the red pickup truck.
Yeah, tell us about that.
His father just picks up a strange woman mid-drive, and TJ, as a little boy, is forced to sit between them. And reflecting on it later, he realized those moments taught him something awful.
That women were disposable objects.
Exactly. It planted these dangerous behavioral models way before he could even process what was happening.
And this is where the analysis really gets deep. You can draw a straight line from that early modeling women are objects for temporary use to his later spiral into sexual addiction.
But the story is so complex because at the same exact time, he's steeped in this environment of light.
Constantly. Church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. He was always hearing the gospel with his mother and grandmother as these incredibly dedicated anchors.
His mother even saw something in him, spiritually. She told him once, there's something different about the way that you pray.
So he's being saturated with light and darkness simultaneously. Then, stability finally arrives with his stepfather, a street kid who met his mom at a Bible study.
Right, and he wasn't a Christian at first, but he was consistent. He was a father figure.
And that consistency paid off. When TJ was a sophomore, his stepfather dedicates his life to Christ. So now you have this complete two-parent Christian home.
And on top of all that, he's constantly getting these external prophecies, right?
Yeah.
Even from a stranger at a McDonald's drive-thru telling him he was going to be a preacher.
It's fascinating. You've got this young man being told he has this high spiritual destiny, while internally he's grappling with trauma and this model of total brokenness. It's an impossible cognitive dissonance.
And that dissonance starts to just explode around age 12.
At summer camp, of all places, it wasn't exactly a wholesome environment. The counselors were young, immature, from rougher neighborhoods.
And they had these Friday night dance parties, which sounds harmless, but TJ points to the specific behavior they encouraged.
Girls were encouraged to perform sexually suggestive dances, he says, twerking on the boys.
For a kid from a strict Christian home, this was completely new, and his body just responded instantly. It wasn't just curiosity. He says it was the spark that ignited this compulsion for lust.
And a compulsion, once it's awake, it has to be fed.
Right. So it finds a target. He discovers pornography at his cousin's house when he's maybe 12 or 13. He said it was jarring at first, but it planted a seed.
A seed that grew very, very quickly into an addiction. He starts actively seeking it out, on the noisy dial-up internet or waiting for those late-night Cinemax broadcasts.
So if you look at the behavior, what's the real fuel here? I mean, what's underneath it all?
Well, his own analysis is that it wasn't just physical, it was psychological. It came from this deep insecurity, this desire to feel wanted or desired, because he felt like he just didn't have a voice as a kid. The addiction gave him a false sense of power.
So it was soothing these underlying wounds.
Exactly. And the result was this life of just radical compartmentalization. Publicly, the good Christian boy, good grades, serving in youth group, choir, lifting hands in worship.
But privately, he was completely consumed by pornography and masturbation. Trapped.
It's the ultimate struggle, isn't it? The conflict between the person he's told he is, a future preacher, and the person he actually is when nobody's watching.
And that inner conflict plays out against this backdrop of, well, miraculous family change.
Right. Before he leaves for college, his mother is diagnosed with a serious brain tumor. And his stepfather, who is still kind of new in his faith, he makes this vow.
If you save my wife, if you heal her, I'll surrender completely to you.
And the source says the tumor's just vanished completely. This incredible healing leads to his stepfather's zealous conversion. So the whole family home is now fully dedicated to Christ.
A huge visible miracle happens right in front of him. And yet
it didn't pull him back, no. His own depravity just accelerated. His high school relationship, he loses his virginity his junior year, and once that line was crossed, he says he just plunged into sleeping with, quote, all of the different girls in my high school.
His self-reflection on this is so important. He just cuts right through the myth that porn is some kind of safer option.
He argues it's inherently destructive. It leads to deeper depravity and critically dehumanization. He realized it made him see women as only objects, just breasts or a bud, in his words, not as human beings made in God's image.
And these destructive habits just multiplied. He gets to college in Southern Ohio, gets introduced to drinking.
And this wasn't a slow slide. The addiction took hold almost immediately. By the end of his freshman year, he's a full-blown alcoholic. He needs to get drunk to sleep and often, tragically, needs to drink as soon as he wakes up.
And the two addictions, they start working together. He calls it a demonic covenant.
It's not just two bad habits running side by side. They feed and amplify each other. The drinking fueled the recklessness for the sexual immorality.
And the guilt from that drove him right back to drinking.
It's a vicious cycle, and his music career, being a rapper and producer, just facilitated all of it. Performing at clubs, bars, it meant endless access to alcohol and women.
The bottom came pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
He drops out of college, he's working at Taco Bell, and the cycle just keeps going. Then comes the legal trouble.
Yeah, he gets arrested for fighting, spends a night in jail, but then he makes the classic mistake of skipping his court date.
Which means there's a warrant out for his arrest in this small, tight-knit town. The law is finally catching up.
And that warrant, that's what brings the crisis to a head. The police show up at his apartment, he hears them, panics, and just bolts out the back.
Reaching a point of complete collapse, he does the only thing he can think to do. He calls his mom, sobbing, "I don't know why God is letting this happen."
And his mother's response is just so calm, rooted in her faith. She reassures him that, despite everything, Christ would eventually pull him back to that foundation she'd built.
But the defining feeling of this whole period, from age 18 to 24, was just this relentless, agonizing emptiness, purposelessness.
He talks about this 1 week-long bender, nonstop drinking and partying. I mean, the absolute peak of the lifestyle he'd been chasing.
And
yet he cried himself to sleep almost every single night. The void was just consuming him.
that emptiness is so key. It shows that even when you get what the addiction promises, the high, the escape, the real wound is still there.
Untouched. He felt the Lord drawing him through 2013. He even started talking about changing his life. His friends, of course, were just mocking him. Yeah, we'll believe it when we see it.
Then comes the ultimate wake-up call. Early 2014.
He's waiting at a traffic light, and right in front of him, a car going 60, maybe 70 miles per hour just T-bones the vehicle directly ahead.
He runs to the scene, sees the driver is unconscious. The steering wheel is literally lodged in his stomach.
A visceral, shocking image.
In the moment of confrontation, the real turning point is when that driver finally wakes up and says, "I was gone, and you guys brought me back."
Wow. And that one sentence, it made eternity real for TJ.
Exactly. It confronted him with judgment, with the life he was living. He knew, intellectually, spiritually, that he had to account for his wickedness.
And this is where you see that idea of being a slave to sin in action. Despite that terrifying brush with mortality, what does he do?
He gets right back in his friend's car and goes straight to the club.
The knowledge, the fear, it wasn't enough to empower him to change. He was powerless over the compulsion.
That tension is the most critical insight here. The profound awareness of the danger, followed by the complete inability to stop.
The final surrender only came after the internal collapse was complete. Shortly after the accident, he has a week of these consecutive, terrifying dreams about falling into hell.
And that existential terror, piled on top of years of emptiness, finally led to the surrender.
The morning of the surrender, March 2014. He shakes his girlfriend awake, tells her he's decided to follow Christ, and walks straight to the kitchen.
And dumps out a 30-pack of Natty Light. And the key takeaway here, the one he really emphasizes, is the instantaneous deliverance.
That's the point that needs focus. For years, he was an alcoholic, he needed it to function, and then in one moment of genuine surrender, the craving just vanished.
This wasn't a 12-step program.
Not at all. It wasn't a slow process. It was an immediate, definitive act of God, which is the foundational belief of the whole testimony. True change requires a divine intervention that goes beyond human effort.
So his life gets turned upside down. He moves home, shares a room with his sister, enrolls in Bible college, works at McDonald's. But he keeps the long-distance relationship.
And right there, he's just replicating his mother's original conflict, trying to serve Christ while still being tethered to this destructive affection, dragging the old life into the new.
He even tries his mom's failed strategy. Marry the girlfriend to justify the relationship. Get Christ's approval.
But it all implodes when he tries to introduce his new morality into it. They're at a gas station, and he suggests abstinence until marriage.
And her response is just immediate, furious refusal. I have needs. I don't want to stop having sex.
And as she walks into the station, his emotional tether is finally and just dramatically severed.
By what he describes as divine intervention. A complete stranger, a Jewish man on a motorcycle, pulls up to his window.
And tells him, God has something different for you. That young lady is not for you. You have to be willing to let it go.
And that direct external confirmation gave him the resolve to end it right then and there.
And this is where the redemption story broadens. It isn't just about him anymore. It becomes familial. He later marries a new woman who had her own struggles and was also saved. And crucially, he'd had 3 children by 3 different women during those dark years.
And he was largely disconnected from them.
Right. But through faith, effort, and the courts, God restores shared parenting of his 2 daughters and eventually his son. He brings a godly influence back into their lives. He then has 3 more children with his wife. The story becomes the healing of a whole broken family structure.
So after all that, what's the key insight for someone listening? He gives this really powerful definition of Jesus, quoting his sister.
Yeah, that Jesus is not just a savior, but he's the one who saved me. He emphasizes that God's pursuit was just relentless despite all the dirt and all the people he'd hurt.
That persistence is so critical because the fight wasn't over. The addictions were gone instantly, but the internal war, that continued.
Absolutely. He says that while alcoholism and sexual immorality were removed, the enemy just found a new weapon: condemnation.
Which, for listeners who might not be familiar, is that feeling of shame and guilt over your ongoing struggles. It makes you doubt if you were ever really saved in the first place.
It's that tension Paul talks about in Romans 7, the struggle between the spirit and the flesh.
So how do you fight that constant shame? Where did the assurance come from?
He found his answer listening to a sermon. The preacher just kept repeating, God is for you. And in that moment, TJ heard this internal affirmation: I have always been devoted to you. His assurance wasn't in his own performance, but in God's faithfulness.
And that leads to his 2 final, really powerful takeaways. First, for the unbeliever or the addict.
Salvation is by faith in Christ alone. You don't try to fix yourself up first. God's power is absolute. No one has gone too far to be reached by that immediate intervention.
And second, for the believer who's wrestling with that condemnation.
We're saved by grace through faith, and we are kept sanctified, made holy the exact same way, by God alone. It's not our job to be perfect, it's our job to receive grace. You have to look away from your own failures and look only to Christ.
As Paul put it, he who calls you is faithful, and he will do it.
TJ's story is just this powerful, tangible proof that even the deepest depravity, rooted in trauma and years of bad choices, doesn't stop a complete and instantaneous narrative reversal. The ultimate lesson is the power of a single, genuine moment of surrender.
Absolutely. And think about this. TJ was told his whole childhood he'd be a preacher. He knew his supposed destiny for decades, yet he lived the complete opposite life. Then you contrast that with the stranger at the gas pump, a final external push that only arrived when he was internally ready. His life shows that external signs of destiny can exist long, long before the internal readiness is there. So what is the difference between knowing your ultimate path and finally having the capacity and the grace to actually live it? That's the question we leave you to ponder.